As a UX expert, what are some of the most frustrating design patterns which are still being used on websites?
Yeah, I think there are, I don't know where to start. There are so many. I think it's very interesting for me to see just that most of the time we should have, normally we should have solved some of those, or many of those issues already. It's 2022, 2023 almost. But I think there are many issues that are not. For example, when we think about infinite scroll, very often it feels intimidating to people. Very often people abandon the scrolling and they just don't anymore. That's one thing. Another thing that we have a lot of things like disabled buttons, which don't communicate clearly to people what is actually a problem. So when people encounter disabled button, a button that just cannot be clicked, often they just don't know how to proceed and they start walking around. They spend so much time and resources and energy on trying to get anywhere. They're just so frustrating. And then also hover menus that just open accidentally, or modals that show up accidentally. I think there are more frustrations than non-frustrations on the web, and all of those things can be fixed. It's, in the end, I think it's all about the right timing.
What are some tips and tricks you could give us regarding the authentication, user login and registration on a website?
Yeah, this is another interesting story, because very often when we think about this, we create this incredibly difficult password rules for people to follow and try to match our requirements. And what people tend to do then is they take the existing password that they reuse across many other sites, and password managers are not as popular as we think they are. And then they add a few characters and forget about that password altogether. And so that's kind of a typical problem that shows up. What we can do or should be doing instead is, especially when we actually deal with users' data, we need to make these rules for login and sign up as simple as possible. So obviously secure, but let's just accept browser's password generation tool. This is going to be fine. And then we need to find a way to nudge people towards two-factor authentication, whether mobile phone or anything else, if it's a secure system. If it's a regular e-commerce site, then just let people use the password that they want to use that's coming from the browser. Because of course, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then we probably should flag it. But if it's something that browser suggests, then we should just let people be. They don't want to come up with passwords every morning and then forget them the next hour, because then they have to recover password, and it's very expensive. So password recovery on its own is a very expensive thing for businesses, because many people never recover passwords.
What are some tips regarding error messages and error on website?
What we could do is to, first of all, really spend time into understanding what kind of messages we have and write good copy for it, good labels, good messages, to explain people what they need to do to fix the problem. Not just that there is a problem, but what they need to do to fix the problem. That's one. And on the other hand, one thing that started showing up, which is very surprising, is that whenever you have a mobile screen, we typically put error messages under input fields. And that's a problem because it actually has three problems. First, usually it would be blocked by virtual keyboard. You will not be able to see it. Then also whenever you have a drop down, you will not be able to see an error message. And also when you have autocomplete, when you start typing and something shows up, this will be covering error message as well. And so it actually seems to be working better, and I highly encourage you to test putting error messages above text boxes and not below them. That might be working much better than we think.
When it comes to e-commerce web design, what are some key ideas entrepreneurs should focus on?
And it's all about finding out what is it that people actually do on the site. But I'm not talking about statistics, I'm not talking about bounce rates, I'm not talking about exit pages, things like that. But really monitoring what kind of tasks do people perform. For example, what do people search on the site for most? What is the most common thing that they search for? If they use filters, how many filters do they use? And then try to help them kind of solve these tasks faster. And for that, we usually come up with a set of the so-called task instructions, which would be, okay, bring 15 people in every 2 to 3 months, give them this task, find a TV set, 34-inch in a price range of this and that, and just see how they do that and how much time they spend doing that, and which errors they encounter doing that, and how fast they recover from those errors if these errors show up. And then the important thing is that over time, if we keep doing this, like say once every 3 months, after 2 years, we'll be hopefully improving the design, knowing that we also have data that proves that we have improved the design. So if these important things that people do on the site gets better, people complete things faster, people find what they need faster, then it's obviously going to help conversion as well.
Could you give us some examples of website design mistake which you keep seeing on?
I don't know why people want to make buttons so small. Buttons deserve attention, they need to be big. Make radio buttons like big radio buttons.
Okay.
I don't know, 50 pixels. Checkboxes, big checkboxes. There is nothing wrong with big checkboxes. And font size in general, it's just a good idea to have big type, big size. But also, I think that we tend to be very, I'm not trying to say it in a negative way, but we're trying to be very boring sometimes.
Okay.
When we do things in a certain way, in a familiar way, which is in general a good idea because familiarity is a good idea and usability is of course very important, and conventions are very important. But if we do everything just as it's supposed to be, then we're kind of missing out on an opportunity to really connect with people, because they just will not even perceive us as something special. But if you slow people down a little bit, just a little bit, every now and again, I'm not talking about some fun gimmicks or anything like that, but maybe make them think a little bit, just a little bit, so they have a chance to connect with you. Otherwise, they're just going to be coming, buying, going, leaving, and never even have a chance to go back.